Hi, I'm Macy Kessler with PulteGroup's Corporate Communications team, and I'm here today with PulteGroup Board of Directors member, Ms. Cheryl Grisé. Hi Cheryl, thanks for being here.
Hi, Macy. Thanks for having me.
So to start, can you take us through a brief walkthrough of your career?
Yes, my career is somewhat unique in that I spent virtually my entire career in the same company. I think I did that because I had a lot of different jobs over my career, and I started as a lawyer, and I thought that was what I would do for the rest of my career, and I think I would have been very happy doing that. And after a few years in that role, I was asked by our management team if I would move into management. And I said, no, thank you very much. I really like what I'm doing. And they said, okay. And they came back about a year later and asked me again. And I gave the same answer. I really was happy doing what I was doing. Felt I'd been to school for a long time to do this, so that's what I wanted to do. The third time they came back, they said to me, this is the last time we're going to ask. And if the answer is no, we'll accept that. So I thought long and hard about it, and I said, I'm going to try a change. So I did. I was first in the role of Vice President of Human Resources, which was something I'd never done before, first management experience, and I really took to it. And then I gradually started taking on more and more responsibilities. I became our company's Chief Administrative Officer. So I had responsibility for not only HR, but IT, I had internal audit, I had security, real estate, lots of things like that, all the cats and dogs in the organization, if you will, that didn't include finance at the time. And so I thought that was the brass ring, and then I was asked to become the company's general counsel. Now I had the top lawyer job, which is what I thought I had always aspired to, and that would be the pinnacle of my career. And then I was asked to actually become the president of our utility group. And in a large gas and electric utility company, that's the top job. 95% of the company's earnings came through that organization. So I had my first real operational role at the top of the organization. So that required a lot of quick learning on my part. But it was a very varied and interesting career that I had.
What are some of the keys to your success throughout your entire career?
First of all, I would have to acknowledge I worked with great people throughout my entire career. Whether they were the people I was working with, working for me, or for whom I was working, I worked with great people. So no one can be successful without that. Additionally, I was always willing to take on stretch assignments, things that were a little beyond my comfort zone, and often those were high-profile assignments and high-risk, high-reward assignments. But I was willing to take on the assignment. I felt if people had enough confidence that I could try it, I went ahead and did it. I always thought that I needed to go the extra mile too. I think part of that came from being one of the few women in the organization, and so I always felt I had to prove a little something extra, and I think I did that. So that was something I think that stood me in good stead and helped me to advance my career.
What is it like to be a woman in, what people think of as more male-dominated industries? And are there any challenges that you faced with that?
As you just said, my entire career was spent in a male-dominated industry. Now I serve on the boards of 3 public companies right now, and I've done more than that. And I was always, the minority in the room in terms of gender. And I became very comfortable with that. I was lucky to work with men who were incredibly professional, who made it easy for me as a woman. So I didn't have a lot of the Me Too kinds of experiences, or any of the Me Too kinds of experiences that we hear about and read about today. I think they're very real, but I was fortunate not to experience that in my career. So working in a male-dominated culture just didn't bother me, so long as they were open to considering issues of diversity, and I felt they had an appropriate focus on that. I think if I'd been in a different environment from that, my experiences might not have been so positive.
And you kind of hit on, the changing times and the Me Too era and things that we've seen. Have you noticed in the industries that you've been in just a change in how women have been treated?
I definitely have seen a change. I think that corporate environments have become more professional. What was okay 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't okay, but what was allowed to happen 20, 30 years ago does not happen as much now. I think corporations have done a much better job of training and educating their workforces about the kinds of behaviors that can be harmful or offensive, or at least perceived that way. So I think as people become more sensitized to how their conduct can be perceived, it's gotten better. So often in my years as a lawyer and as an executive, the problems that I saw came not in the 9 to 5 workday. It was when there was a social component to the job. People would tend to exert behaviors that you didn't see them exerting in the office during the day. So I think people have to be particularly conscious about that, and I think that a lot of the messaging needs to be around those, that just because you're in a social situation, it doesn't mean that your conduct is going to be held to a different standard.
So, what are some strategies that you've learned for how women can achieve a more prominent role in their organization?
Well, I can only speak to my experience or what I've seen working with others, but I think it's pretty common that women who are moving to higher levels in the organization are willing to take on the difficult assignments, willing to move around, to take something that is way outside their comfort zone sometimes, but also very importantly is having sponsors, people who believe in your career and are willing to look out for that, to promote you, not just in the job promotion sense, but to promote your candidacy for different kinds of jobs, for women to get considered. And so I think if you show that you're open to taking on those different assignments, you're open to change, I think that will help women go a long way.
Well, that's wonderful advice right there. And so now I want to ask you, what's some of the best advice you've ever received, and how did it shape you as a leader?
Oh, I've gotten so much good advice over my career. I always think back to something my mom said, and I maybe translate it differently from the words she used, but she always said, you got to practice what you preach, Cheryl. And I translate that into, you need to lead by example. And that comes from setting the tone at the top of whatever organization you're in, whether you're just managing yourself or you're managing other people and leading other people. You really shouldn't be asking people to do things that you're not willing to do. When I ran the utility companies, when our folks would so often be called out to work for days when there were power outages in all kinds of difficult positions, I made sure that while I wasn't out there repairing the lines, of course, I was out there visiting the crews. They knew that what they were doing mattered to the organization. It mattered to me. I was in the war room. We called it our war room, where we certainly monitored the situation. I would go in at midnight, when people were not expecting to see me in there. And, that gets out to the organization. People know that you do that. And then I think you become a much more authentic leader, and you can build more trust and certainly engender more support if you are willing to lead by example.
So now I want to turn back and kind of talk more about the board here at PulteGroup. So is organizational diversity something that's discussed a lot here on the board level?
It is discussed on the board level. It is being discussed more. I think to say that it's discussed a lot would be an overstatement. I'm being very candid about that. But I can assure you it is being discussed more. Today we have a board meeting and it is on the agenda. What we don't do so much is discuss diversity in a vacuum. We discuss it in the context of management succession, promotions, what's the slate of candidates look like, trying to ensure that we have got a diverse slate. We are not where we need to be in terms of our diverse workforce at Pulte, particularly I think as it relates to women and people of color. But I want to assure you and the organization that the board does have a focus on this, and we take it very seriously. And it may take some time, but it's going to improve.
That's fantastic to hear. Just that you are working about it and that those conversations are ongoing.
Absolutely, they are.
So are there any different diversity initiatives that you guys are advancing?
Their focus more recently is on gender diversity. So clearly we are putting a focus on that. We have 2 females on our board. In time, that will get bigger. The question is how quickly can we go on that? You don't want a board that's bigger in size than you need for the size of corporation that you are. But on the other hand, you do want to make sure you're being responsive to your shareholders. So we are working on that as well.
What is the value that diversity brings to an organization, from the board down to the employees?
I think that the backgrounds that we have, that we come from, our perspectives, and I'm not just talking about gender diversity. I think that just informs our decision making better. You get broader perspectives than you have when you have people of similar backgrounds, similar experiences. So I just think that diversity of experience and thought leads to better outcomes, and that's what we want for our employees, for our shareholders, and for ourselves.
Now I do want to turn this to you. How important have mentors been in your career?
I never had formal mentors, but I have had wonderful sponsors throughout my career, from the people who first picked me out of the law department and said, we think you'd make a good manager in this organization. We'd like to see you make that change, all the way through my career. None of the moves I made through the course of my career were at my instigation. They were because someone said they thought that I could do a different job and do it well. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. If you believe I can, I believe I can do that too. So I've had sponsors throughout my career. I've also mentored many people, though. While I didn't have the benefit of a mentor, I think it's very important. And so I've been willing to take my time to mentor both men and women in the organization. I don't think that just women can mentor women. We can all do both. And so I think mentorship is extremely important, and it's a great opportunity if you can offer it to people.
In 2001, less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs were women. Now in 2019, that's risen slowly but surely up to 7%. So what's your take on that rate and how it might grow in the future?
Well, that's been a slow rate. Unfortunately, that's been a slow rate. And if I had a crystal ball, I would say it's going to move faster, but it's going to continue to move slowly. And the reason I say that is there are a lot of women moving up in organizations. They're in the pipeline. My concern is so often they're moving into positions of greater responsibility, but they're often staff positions that they're moving into. And what I think corporations need to do a better job at is getting them into those key operational roles. I have been involved in many CEO succession conversations over my now becoming long career as a corporate director. And never once was operational experience not a criteria. And often it is the most important, the criteria. In fact, usually it's the most important criteria. So until women can get those important experiences as well, not just coming to the top of perhaps the marketing organization, but can get that operational experience, I don't think they're going to be on the short lists and the successful candidates as future CEOs. So I think that's where a lot of work needs to be done. Getting women the right experiences, particularly the operational experiences, will cause that rate of change to accelerate.
So broadly speaking, I do want to touch on that. What do you think is the biggest hindrance to women getting those operational roles to eventually lead companies, serve on boards? What do you think that is?
I think it's just what I've said, not having the experience, those experiential opportunities, particularly in operating roles. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that for boards. It depends on what you're looking for in each board position, but particularly for the CEO jobs, I think it's important. But for coming onto boards, it depends on how your background fits what the board is looking for. As I said, we build a diverse board, so each search for a new board member is looking for someone with a different kind of background. But the broader your background, the broader your experience, the more likely you're going to have an opportunity to serve on a board and, frankly, to move into the most senior levels of corporate America.
So I do want to leave you with this final thought. What advice do you have for someone who's early on in their career and aspires to lead?
I think I would say to always take on those difficult assignments when you have the opportunity to do that, and when you do, make sure you exceed expectations. No one gets ahead by just meeting expectations. So if you want to succeed, exceed expectations in those high-profile stretch assignments. Be flexible. Be willing to take on different job responsibilities, different roles. Sometimes that means a lateral move, and that's okay. That's rounding out your experience and broadening you. So I think that's really important. I think how you interact with people is very, very important. I always say to women in particular, know how to disagree. Watch how some people disagree and it works, and some people don't, and everyone wants to leave the room. So I've always said to women, it's particularly important to know how to disagree. You know, there's a B word that rhymes with witch that sometimes is used with women when they disagree in a way that maybe it works for some men. So I think it's particularly important for women to do that. If there are gaps in your experience or in your education, make sure you fill those in. You know where they are. So do everything you can to do that. I've often looked at two people for the same promotion, and one had that extra bit of education, and all else being equal, the nod would go to that person. So make sure if you're in that contest, you're the person that has that educational background, if it's something that's pretty easy for you to do. So those are some of the things I'd suggest anyway.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate your time being here.
Oh, I've so enjoyed doing this today. I really appreciate your giving me the opportunity to do this and have a way to speak to the organization that I don't usually have. So thanks.